Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 145 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melisa Lieberman, and I am thrilled you are here today. If you're brand new, welcome. I'm excited to share this topic with you here today. And if you have listened to the podcast religiously or in the past periodically, welcome. So happy you're here and continue to listen and that this podcast gives you value. So that is why we're here. I am excited today to talk with you about what I like to call an unconventional approach to your consulting business goal setting. So I'm recording this the middle of December. It will go live, I believe, I've lost track of time, maybe right before Christmas. And it's that time of year, right? It's that time of year to be thinking about what your goals are for next year and thinking about what you want to create in your business next year. So, enjoying that pause between, toward the end of the year before the new year hits and using this time to really think and imagine the business that you want and the goals that you want to set to bring that vision to life. And if you happen to be listening to this episode sometime in the future, and it isn't the end of the year, this technique that I'm going to give you today is really applicable to your quarterly goal setting as well. So, no matter what time of year it is, this is a really helpful exercise to go through, an unconventional approach to your goal setting. And I'm excited to share it with you today because I think I've seen it so often help consultants and even myself push through plateaus, push through what feels like a ceiling, push through what feels like an upper limit, and really unlock the ability to achieve results that you didn't believe were possible. And that's what I want to help you with. And that's why I'm recording today's episode for you. So, with that, let's dive into the topic and really challenge you today. Today, we're going to challenge you to think about your goal setting in a slightly different way than you've probably ever thought of or ever may have even heard of before. So I want to give you something that might shake things up here a little bit. Part of the reason why I'm doing this is not just the end of the year, but also as I talk to consultants who are setting goals. Sometimes it's consultants when we're very first starting out a coaching engagement and we're talking about the goals that they want to set for the coming 12 months. Or right now, this time of year, where I'm talking with consultants all the time about their goals for next year. So in those conversations, what I often find is what I'll call incremental goal setting. Incremental goal setting. So, for example, if you made $250,000 last year in your business, an incremental goal might be $300,000. Or if you made 750 last year in your consulting business, an incremental goal might be 800 or 850 this coming year. Or another way that I often hear goals being stated to me, and it is an incremental way, is I want to replace my corporate income, or I want to replace the income I would be making had I stayed in corporate. Those are all examples of what I'll call incremental goal setting. And this process of incremental goal setting is something that is very common when we set personal goals, very common even when we were back in corporate, 10% year over year growth or 20% year over year growth, whatever it was. So it's all incremental type growth that generally speaking is part of the way that have been taught to do business. And that's what I want to shake up a little bit here today and help you with a different way of looking at this so that, again, you can accelerate the achievement so that you can accelerate the type of business that you're wanting to achieve. That's why we're here. That's what we're talking about. And when I say accelerate, sometimes we think, well, that means that we're just trying to make more and more and more money. And that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is you can make more money and also do that in a way that's sustainable for you, where you're not burning out, where you're taking on the type of work that's very fulfilling and impactful for you. Really looking at your goals in a holistic way. The purpose of this episode is not to, encourage you just to chase the financial number. It's about a holistic goal setting process where we're looking at all the different factors that are important to you as you're running your business, setting goals around them, and using this unconventional approach that I'm about to share with you. So, with that, hopefully that sets the stage of why we're here. We're here because there's so much incremental goal setting happening. And I want to encourage you to look at this goal setting in a different way. So let's talk about the agenda for today. I'm going to share with you first what is this unconventional approach to your consulting goals. And then we'll talk about why to implement this unconventional approach. I've already given you a little bit of a taste of that. And then we'll talk about what type of consultant this works best for. And on the opposite side, the type of consultant that it might not be the best approach for yet. And then I'll give you a case study so you can understand in practice what this might look like. And then we're going to wrap up with a segment of But Melisa, because you're probably going to argue with me as you're thinking about what I'm about to share with you. There may be some argument about whether this would work for you or not, or whether this is for your type of personality or not. And so I want to really point that out to you toward the end, and then we'll wrap it up all together with a process for you to put into action. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a little bit of fun today. I'm going to challenge you to think about your goals slightly differently. You might argue with me. I wish we could have that debate in person, but we'll have it here on the podcast. And then hopefully give you some good takeaways that you can put into place and be thinking about what those goals are in your business and getting really explicit about setting those goals. So, with that, before we dive into step one of the agenda, I want to encourage you to go download the 12-month planning process workbook from my website. And it will give you a 5-step process for you to set your goals for the coming 12 months. And really starting off with something that's so incredibly important and vital that a lot of times we skip over, which is assessing the last 12 months. I did an episode about that, I think 2 episodes ago, 143, if I'm not mistaken. And then it walks you through the subsequent 4 steps to get to the place where you've really got a solid set of goals, which can leverage this unconventional approach I'm about to share with you here today, breaks those goals down, and sets up an accountability system for you. So go download that at melissalieberman.com/plan, and you'll be able to download that workbook and get started with this work of planning out your next 12 months. And let's do it from the frame of reference of what this unconventional approach is that I'm about to share with you today. So we'll put the link to that plan in the show notes because my name is missing a bunch of letters and it's easier to click a link. So we'll do that. Okay, so with that, I'm going to tell you what this unconventional approach to setting your goals is. Without further ado, what the unconventional approach to setting your goals looks like is the following. You look at what you want to accomplish in the next 3 years. What do you want your business to look like? What type of revenue are you generating? What does your schedule look like? What is the nature of work that you're taking on that's coming to you? What are those most ideal clients that you are so excited to work with every week and every day? A really clear and vivid picture about what that version of your business looks like in the next 3 years. So, zooming out 3 years from now, what does your business look like? Incrementally different than what it looks like now, most likely. You might have a thriving business right now where you're making a lot of money, you have a lot of flexibility. How could it be even better? Or if you're not quite where you want to be, really stretch yourself to say, this is ideally what I want to grow my business into. So now that you have that picture in your mind, I'm going to pause here for a moment, like get the picture in your mind of what this 3-year vision looks like for yourself in your business. Now that you have that, the unconventional goal setting process for your consulting business is to go for that right now. Don't wait for 3 years. And the reason why I say it's unconventional is because typically what we would think of logically to get to that 3-year vision that you just put in your head is that we would take it in incremental parts, right? We would break it down. We might even divide it into thirds and accomplish one third, one third, one third until we get there. That would be a normal, logical, practical way that we've probably done this in the past, that you've done this in the past. Break it up into chunks and build your way up to it. What I'm saying to you today from an unconventional place is let's look at this slightly differently, actually, not slightly, radically differently, and go for what you want right now and give yourself 3 at bats to get there. So rather than building incrementally, kind of like a stair step, go for it this year. And you're likely going to fall short. We'll get to that in a moment. You're probably not liking that. I don't like that either, but hear me out. So you go for it that first year and all the learnings you take away from that. You have 2 more at bats to get to where it is that vision that you had in your head a minute ago. You have 2 more chances. You go for it next year based on all the learnings you had this year. And you probably still will fall short because we're talking about a 3-year vision here. We're not talking about just incremental change. We're talking about something really big, something exciting, something you want to create. You're a business owner. You get to decide anything. You get to decide what that is. And this unconventional approach is you taking 3 at bats to get there rather than incrementally inching your way toward it. Now, let me tell you why you would do this, because it might sound like a bad idea. It might sound like a bad idea because you're going to fail. If the goal is big enough and the delta between where you are now and that 3-year vision is big enough, you're going to fail in year 1. Unless something crazy happens, which is a possibility, most likely you're not going to get there. And that's okay. And I'm going to share with you why I would even recommend this to you and how the failure could actually be a benefit as well. So, first, let's talk about why would I even spend a podcast episode on this, much less recommend this approach to you. And that is because when you put this distance be in your mind between where you're at right now and where you want to be, and you stretch out that distance, it helps you to get perspective. Right now, you might most likely are operating in the weeds. You're used to operating on your regular day to day. You're used to doing what you're doing and getting the type of results that you're getting. You're used to juggling meetings with clients and trying to, fit in lead generation and things on your business. You're used to operating the way you're operating. And the way you're operating and the way you have been operating is producing those existing results. So you can take the traditional approach and try to do more of that or try to make it incrementally better and start stair stepping toward that 3-year vision. Or you can do what I'm recommending, which is really start thinking about what is the difference? What is the difference between where I'm at right now and that 3-year vision? And what is going to have to change in order for me to get to that 3-year vision? Imagine thinking about that right now. The benefit of that is that it opens up this perspective because it is such a wider distance between where you are now and where that 3-year vision is. It gives you that so much more perspective than being so in the weeds and so close to the problem that it's hard to see. So that's the first benefit is it helps you to unlock a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing your business and the ability to take a step back and think, okay, if I want to, in the next 3 years, I'll just make up a goal for you. In the next 3 years, I want to be making $1 million with 70% profit, and I want to be working on client delivery 3 days a week and on my business 1 day a week and having a 3 day weekend. Let's say that that's your goal. And the nature of your business might be that you want to mostly work on advisory and strategy type engagements and a lot less on roll up your sleeve, hands on implementation execution type engagements. Let's just make that up as a goal for you for the purposes of this episode. Imagine what you need to be thinking in order to achieve that goal as it compares to the way you're thinking now. Imagine what needs to shift about your lead generation process compared to what you're doing right now. Imagine what needs to change in your sales process to build up the value that would hit those numbers with the, working the amount of time that you want to be working, doing the nature of work that we just described as an example. You see where everything has to be relooked at from a completely different lens, which is such a different vantage point when you're at that vantage point of having achieved the 3 year goal and looking back versus where you are right now and trying to see forward. It gives you such a different perspective and it unlocks a new way of thinking because what got you here is not going to get you there, that big vision that you've got in the next 3 years. The other thing that this unconventional goal setting approach does is it helps you transform into a business owner who creates those results. You've got to transform into that version of you ahead of time in order to create those results. You don't become that version, for example, that $1 million version of a business owner after you've created the $1 million. You need to become that version of you who thinks like a $1 million business owner and the way a $1 million business owner generates leads and a way the $1 million business owner interacts with their prospective clients and the way a $1 million business owner facilitates a sales process and the way a $1 million business owner prices out their work. Whatever your goal is, your goal might be 500,000. I'm just giving you an example here. So whatever your goal is, look at that idea of going from this vantage point of where you want to be in 3 years and looking back onto your business and what needs to shift about your processes, what needs to shift about your mindset, what needs to shift about the way that you're engaging with your clients and your prospective clients, and making your decisions from that vantage point and making your decisions from the perspective of this is the goal that I've set. I'm going to put in place a plan that I believe is going to get me to that goal and committing to it. And then in the next 12 months, seeing where that, and of course, you'll evaluate more often than that, but zoom ahead in the next year and see where that takes you and see where the deficiencies are in the approach. You can see where you need to shift because your assumptions were wrong. You give yourself 3 chances to go hit that goal rather than just incrementally trying to climb your and crawl your way and grasp your way there. It helps you to transform into the business owner who creates those results in a more accelerated way. It also will teach you how to learn to fail. You probably don't like to fail. None of us do. In fact, I may have shared this on the podcast before, but in the past, there were times where I was emphatic. I'm not someone who fails. I've never failed and I'll never fail, at anything moving forward, which was incredibly short-sighted. All it meant was I set goals that were basically slam dunks. And so therefore I never failed, which is probably not even true that I never failed. But, it's like this identity that you build up for yourself. You may be in a similar boat. I know so many consultants who are. being proud of not ever failing isn't necessarily something to be proud of. We're taught in our society not to fail. Getting an F on a paper is a terrible situation, or an F in a class, right? We're taught that we should do everything to prevent failing that we can. In this case, I'm telling you the opposite. I'm encouraging you to go out there and set a plan that's so big that you will fail in year one. But the benefit is the learning that you get from that. And I'm not saying go burn down your business and just throw caution to the wind here. What I'm saying is take the strong foundation you've already built and then go look at it from that vantage point of 3 years from now, looking back as the business owner who created this result, get into that headspace and then look back and say, okay, here I am in year one. What do I think I need to do? What are the shifts I need to make in my business? How do I need to be thinking differently? What are the shifts in my ideal market or in my service offerings? All those types of questions to ask yourself so that you make yourself a plan, the best plan you can possibly think of right now to hit that goal and then commit to it, knowing that most likely you're not going to succeed. But that's the point because you want all of those learnings. You want a pile of learnings from which you can then iterate and adjust and move forward into next year until finally the third year, the result almost becomes inevitable because of this. So that's why I'm recommending this unconventional approach for you as you're setting your goals for your consulting business. Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're someone who wants to achieve big things. You want to be successful and to have achieved everything you possibly can as a business owner and as a human for that matter. So now that you know what the unconventional goal approach is and you know why I'm recommending it, I do want to give a slight caveat here because this unconventional approach is not for everyone. This is not for every consultant. And the way that I like to look at this is if you're brand new to consulting, and you haven't yet really established a strong foundation where you know who you work with, you know what your messaging and positioning is, you know what your service offerings are, and you've generated a consistent revenue stream for at least 6 months if not a year, then I would say this probably is not the best approach for you because you want to really get all of those fundamentals in place before you start thinking about what might this look like 3 years from now. But if you're someone who has a few clients under your belt, you've generated revenue in a fairly consistent way. It doesn't have to be the same every month. Sometimes for consultants, it's never the same for every month. But you know how to acquire new clients, you know how to generate demand, and you know, generally speaking, what your service offerings are and your ideal clients. I'm sure all of that could use improvement. It can for everyone. But if you've got some of those wins under your belt and you feel like you've got a strong enough foundation, then this is likely a really beneficial approach for you, this unconventional goal setting. If you're at the place where you're wanting to just get some footing under you, get a repeatable type of business model going, then you might consider setting some stretch goals for a year or two and then implement this unconventional goal strategy. If you have a question about where you fit in this spectrum and you're not sure about whether this is for you or not, reach out and book a call with me. We can talk about it. It's consultmelisa.com to see what might make the most sense for you and your business. But you're going to have to decide whether what I'm sharing today is something that really makes sense because you've got some of those fundamentals in place. Of course, they could use a lot of refinement, and you have one of two choices. You can either feel inspired and go for it, or you can say, oh, well, this probably doesn't apply to me and play it safe. And I'm going to challenge you. If you've had a few clients and you meet that basic criteria I just described, then don't talk yourself out of this. Don't let the fear hold you back or create some situation where you're using logic and reasoning and rationalizing to keep yourself playing small. So, with that, now that we've talked about what is this unconventional goal setting process, what is the benefit of it, who is it for? Now, let's talk about what it might look like to do this type of goal setting. So, I've given you some flavor of this already, but I'll just give you a little case study. So, I had a client who came to me and said, we were working on their goals for this coming 12 months. And I asked them what the goal was. And she said, basically, it was about 50 to 75K more than she had made the previous 12 months. And I asked her why. Why is it that number? Well, it feels really realistic. I'm going to have to make some changes. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is sustainable. The economy feels a little shaky. So this feels like a really solid plan. Those were some of the reasonings behind why she had set that number. She also said that she didn't want to set such a big number, so beyond what she had already done, that it felt overwhelming or it felt impossible. She wanted to create a goal that was, a little bit of a stretch, but also realistic and attainable. And you might be in that same boat. You might love setting practical goals and getting that dopamine hit when you reach the goal. But listen, your business is not a form of entertainment for you. You're not in business to get a dopamine hit by hitting a goal that was safe and checking off. It's like I love putting tasks on my task list to check it off. That's not what we're doing here to put something on our checklist so we can check it off. What you're doing here is you want to build a business that meets all of your criteria, financial criteria, the autonomy that you have, the nature of work you're doing, how fulfilled you are, the impact you're making, the schedule and the work life balance you're having, all of those things. And so, anyway, I was talking with this client and she was telling me about this incremental goal that she wanted to set. And I pushed her. I said, look, why are you not considering something bigger? Why not zoom ahead to this 3-year goal and set it now? I'm not saying race ahead and try to burn yourself out or get so far over the tips of your skis, as they say here in Colorado, that you make big mistakes and ruin your reputation. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying zoom out and think about the business you want in 3 years. And what is it going to take to get there? What has to shift about your business to make those things happen? And start making those shifts now, not recklessly, methodically, thinking about what it is that has to change about your business model, about you as a business owner, about the types of clients that you work with, about the types of projects you agree to take on, and the ones you don't, the ones you refer over. I said all of this to her. It shook everything up. And, she said this verbally to me, but I could also just see the wheels turning in her mind about all the different things that are opened up now as possibilities because she went from, let me pick the practical, basically safe goal that I know I can check off and feel good about it to let me reimagine my business and think about what it's going to take to get to that 3-year mark and start testing those things out now to give myself 3 chances to make it happen. It completely shifted the way she was thinking about her business. And in fact, even some of the decisions she was making about what kinds of clients she wanted to pursue in the next 12 months, what kinds of projects that she would agree to take on and what she wouldn't, and her pricing. All of it shifted just with this one idea of an unconventional goal setting method. So, hopefully, that gives you an example. And I've given you a couple here throughout this episode of what it might look like to implement this type of unconventional goal setting process. And unless you're brand new, never having had a client or maybe 1 or 2 clients and you're just not sure how to create demand, I highly recommend working on, I was about to say trying this goal setting method, but we don't want to try anything. We want to commit to it, want to go full force into this goal setting method so that you can create that shift in the way that you're looking at things and ultimately the results will follow. Okay, so let's wrap up this episode with the but. We have to have a but, Melissa, here. You may be arguing with me. You may be thinking something like, well, I'm someone who sets goals and achieves them, or I don't want to be disappointed, or this could backfire and I'll backslide in my results. I could do worse this year than I did last year. I don't want to burn out. I'll get discouraged. Listen, you're going to be discouraged. I guarantee if you implement this plan that I'm suggesting to you, this approach, you're going to be disappointed, discouraged, frustrated, doubting, and worried about failing. And all of that is okay. All of that is okay because the more adept we are at managing through those negative emotions and continuing to go forward with commitment, with certainty, with confidence, the further you're going to get from a results perspective. Your goal as a business owner is not to mitigate and create a scenario or a business structure that helps you to avoid being disappointed or frustrated or discouraged. That's not the point of your business. And so you certainly don't want to be setting your goals from that vantage point either. Instead, think about, I'm going to set this goal so big, and I'm also going to become the version of myself and the version of a business owner who's fine with and understands that being disappointed or frustrated or scared is part of the game and not let that stop you. What an incredible outcome if you were able to achieve that this year. So that's the but, Melissa. I just agreed with you. Yes, you're going to do all of those things, and that's okay. That's okay. Keep going anyway. Okay, so let's pull all of this together with a challenge that I have for you here at the end of this episode. Ask yourself, what do you want your business to look like in the next 3 years? Is it $1 million? Is it $750,000? Is it $500,000? Is it working 4 days a week or 3 days a week? Is it doing strategy and advisory type work instead of execution type work? What is it for you? What do you want your business to look like in the next 3 years? Financially, your schedule, the nature of work you're taking on, the impact you're making, the reputation you're building for yourself, and how you're sought after for being an expert at what you do. And then set that goal. Set that goal now instead of waiting to climb up to it in the next 3 years. Set it now and go for it. So you give yourself 3 at-bats instead of incremental building upon each other and hopefully getting there at the end. Give yourself those 3 at-bats so that you can learn how to overcome the fear, so that you can become that version of yourself as a business owner who thinks and takes action and carries themselves and has the level of confidence that mirrors that of what you will have when you reach that goal ultimately. Use this as a tool to accelerate your results and to overcome your perceived limitations, and ultimately to build something you never thought was possible in your business. This is what I'm hoping for you. And that's why I shared this episode with you today. And I look forward to seeing you here again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.